Welcome to Chapter 11 with the topic Writing a Good Introduction and Opening Sentence for Study. We can divide this chapter into 4 parts: introduction, positioning and introduction with a qualitative study, 5 key elements of a good introduction, and summary. So why the skill of writing a good introduction to your qualitative study is so important? When we write papers or essays, we often develop the paper complete with the topics and then go back and write introduction that summarize the topics in our papers. Writing the introduction to a research study is a craft into itself, and the introduction needs to be carefully developed with the attention toward engaging the readers in the study. If the introduction doesn't attract readers, they will not likely read the rest of the study. Also, part of a good introduction is an opening sentence. This is an important phase of your introduction. It needs to draw readers in, present information that is at a level that they can understand, and be scholarly in its tone. Assuming that the purpose of an introduction is to present a problem or issue leading to their need for the study, let us position this introduction with the important first phases of a project. Already, we have discussed the importance of finding a topic and then writing a good title and abstract. The opening section in a qualitative study then introduces the problem or need for the study. After this, the opening section ends with a purpose statement that narrows the problem down to a manageable objective or focus. Then the research questions narrow it further to specific questions that will be answered in the study. Finally, the research design presents that the data will be collected to answer the research questions. Through the beginning of a study, we are starting to narrow the focus of the project to research questions that can be answered with specific individuals. We cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a good introduction to a qualitative study. Care needs to be taken in the presenting the opening material of a study. One way to learn about how to write the introduction is to study good introductions. This was the approach John took in the first edition of a research design, qualitative and quantitative approaches, Creswell 1994. In that book, in chapter 3, he reproduced the entire introduction to a journal article by Trenzini, Pascarella, and Laurent 1982, and then highlighted what he felt were the major elements in their introduction. He called the approach the deficiencies model of writing an introduction and has often described it as a standard form of writing good introduction to a research study. The 5 major components that go into a good deficiencies are the topic being examined in the study, the research problem or problems, evidence in the literature justifying the problem, deficiencies in this literature, audiences that will profit by the studies addressing these deficiencies. John next used the same approach in his text, Educational Research. In that book, he included as a figure the entire introduction to one of his studies addressing teen smoking and depression among high school students, and he placed marginal notes alongside the text to show what elements of an introduction were being used at certain points in the text. It's important to state the topic in the opening sentence or two. This is not as easy as it might seem. The topic needs to be presented in a way that readers can immediately identify. It can't be so narrow that the reader doesn't understand the general orientation of your qualitative study. Likewise, it cannot be stated so broadly that the reader cannot relate to the topic. One way to determine if you have the topic framed in the right level of understanding is to ask people in your class or your friends to read the opening lines and see if they relate to your topic. It's best if these individuals are not people who work in your specific subject field. The second idea to convey then in the introduction is the problem or the issue leading to a need for the study. We have often felt that the research problem or issue is something that needs to be addressed and potentially solved. It is indeed a problem. Think about how novel starts with a dilemma, how plays begin with controversy, how music moves, or how sitcoms on television typically introduce several dilemmas that often run simultaneously and are solved. Research is no different. It begins with a problem or an issue. In short, the author presents the need for the study, and if this need is not clearly announced in the beginning of the qualitative study, then readers have no need to continue reading. The next step in the introduction is to provide evidence on what has been studied about the problem. This evidence is typically based on the literature and the studies of the problem. Now here a clarification is needed. This reference to the literature is not a literature review citing specific studies or specific results of the studies. It is instead a general review for literature to set the stage for your study. Think about your literature map and the broad headings just below the top box in your map. These broad headings will help you map the general terrain of what authors have studied. Not specific studies, but you may say, no one has studied my topic. Of course, your particular topic may be quite focused. If you are to branch out beyond your topic, you can find others who have studied topics closely related to yours. In this section, you need to summarize the research that has been done on your topic and then point toward deficiencies in the literature. You may draw on quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method studies as we described in the extant literature. The next passage refers to comments you would make about the shortcoming of the literature on the problem. You might mention several shortcomings and draw on deficiencies such as topics not addressed, issues in research methods not adequately included, practical problems not fully explored, or a need to repeat a study with a new small qualitative sample. There are many types of deficiencies you can point out, and it's helpful to cite several of them. It's important as well for you to be thinking at the point about what qualitative research has to offer. Recall the qualitative research allows you to explore, to listen to the views of participants, to ask open-ended questions, and so forth. The present literature may be deficient in the several of these ways, and you could present at this section of the introduction a rationale for using qualitative research, because past literature has been primarily quantitative or has not included important qualitative components. The final section of an introduction refers to individuals and groups that profit from learning about or addressing the problem. I want you to think about the audience that may read your qualitative study. This may include fellow researchers, policymakers, practitioners in the field, leaders, graduate students, or committee members. In this final passage of the introduction, consider citing several audiences that will profit from reading your study. We mentioned that writing about the topic in the first few sentences begins a good qualitative introduction. Now we want to narrow this to the first sentence. Our friends in English composition call this the narrative hook. Crafting good opening sentence creates reader interest and helps draw reader into your study. It's useful to think about how to craft the sentence and the ways it might be done. And the opening sentence can convey the following: a personal statement about the researcher, past research conducted on your topic, a timely issue, statistical information about a specific participant or site in your study, a question, references to give the opening sentence some scholarly weight. Here we can see several examples. Example 1, a personal statement about the researcher. Example 2, a statement about the key participant in study by the researcher. Example 3, a statement about the past research on the topic. To sum up, a good qualitative introduction consists of several ideas. It begins with a topic and includes in this topic a strong narrative hook to draw the reader into the study. It then moves into a specific problem or issue that needs to be addressed and into a discussion of the existing literature that addresses the problem. Deficiencies in the literature are noted next, and these deficiencies might include the lack of qualitative research and some of the strong elements that constitute qualitative research. Finally, the section ends with a statement about the potential audience that will profit from the study. The members of this audience can be drawn from different categories such as researchers, policymakers, practitioners, and leaders.